And welcome back to another episode of Around Comics. I am Brian Salazar, and you are Christopher Niesman. And Tom Caters is hopefully he's got a cord for his laptop this week.
Say it's a bit, it's not an episode unless Tom joins us, late in process.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's up, my friend?
It's December.
Are you black eye? Look at that.
What? Oh, did you get popped by somebody?
I got a knee in the head.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. That's that's probably the safest place to hit you.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's the least damage possible. But I thought I got hit more over here in the temple, but he must have got me up here too.
Yeah, you got a little bit of a
shiner. Got a little shiner there.
Shiner there. Yeah, you big hunk of man, you.
What is new? I like that shirt you're wearing, Delilah's. We haven't been there in a while.
I know. I took you. That's one of my favorite watering holes in Chicago. Whenever I bring now friends from Milwaukee to Chicago, we always go there, and they're like, "Where the hell are you taking us?" Even though that neighborhood's pretty nice now, but Delilah's an old punk bar that you walk in and you have no idea that you're walking into one of Malt Advocate's best whiskey bars in America.
I was actually there. Was it last fall or the fall before? I think it was last fall. My buddy's band was actually playing, and so I went and had a good time. Had a good old time. Some old punk, some old punkers.
It's a great bar.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I remember the first time.
Man, I'll tell you what. The last time I went, so this will make me sound really old. I took my daughter maybe 2 summers ago to see Post Malone. She wanted to go see Post Malone.
Okay.
At the United Center, and when I was growing up, going to the United Center was sort of like going to Iraq. I mean, it was not a nice neighborhood, and now it's like white women walking their dogs, in the middle of the night. Safely.
You got to go like 5 blocks north.
It's
so rough.
But man, I'll tell you what, I was shocked because I hadn't been down there in a while. And I was like, wow, they've really gentrified this neighborhood a bit. It's really nice.
The United Center there.
Yeah.
So now it's just that area. It used to be between the Eisenhower and like Bucktown was pretty dicey. Now the United Center, it's kind of squeezed that area a little bit tighter. But yeah, there's still an interesting Buffalo bar. What is it? Buffalo Bar Delilah's?
I'm not sure what that comment means. Chris Revicant from Facebook says Buffalo Bar Delilah's. I don't know what the Buffalo Bar.
Well, Chris is a good guy. Chris used to. I assume you're listening. You used to do a comic book exchange over at Lizard's Liquid Lounge. Just reply back. I think I used to hang out there from time to time. That was another good Chicago watering hole.
There's enough of them.
Yeah, Chicago's good for bars and comic book shops.
Probably a few less by the time summer comes around this year, but
we'll see. People always drink, so they will rise from the ashes. So, but anyway, that's me. How are you doing, sir?
Good. Just there he is.
There he is.
The original Captain something. I'm not sure what that
Captain. The original Captain Marvel.
Original Captain Marvel, Tom. How are you, Tom?
I'm good.
We were just talking bars in Chicago.
Some of our favorites.
Some of our.
I've got my Delilah's shirt on.
Yeah, all the bars I used to like to go to are all closed.
Well, that's what happens when you get old.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is the Owl still open?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Club Foot closed. I used to like going to Club Foot. Danny's is closing. In Bucktown Classic Bar.
Really? Danny's Well is closing?
The Danny's, the place with the DJs off Damon.
Yeah.
Is closing.
Wow.
Permanently.
Sadness. All right. Let's not dwell on such things. Let's talk about happy things like
comic books.
And Mandalorian, which was not happy this week. But
Mandalorian.
Are we going to dive in? So, Sal, what is this new segment you have baked up for us? It's the
I don't know. Well, I mean, I just had
dumpster dive.
Deep dives, or
Okay,
I don't know, dumpster dive, whatever we want to call it. I don't know. I don't.
the Around
I don't have
Comics
anything.
dumpster dive.
Long box nostalgia, longing for long boxes. I don't know. But yeah, it's last week
here's mine. I hope it's not a snake whenever I reach in there.
Yeah. So last week we all independently randomly picked a comic book out of our own long boxes. We just grabbed a long box, grabbed a comic, and then we had to read that for this week. So it was an interesting experiment, I thought. I'm not sure if I want to do it again, quite honestly.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then why don't you lead us off with, I don't remember what you picked. What was the comic that you picked, Chris?
I grabbed Checkmate number 4, and this is number 24. Sorry, and this is where things can get a little weird in your plan. Is that this is part 2 of Cobra's Nest?
Hey, that's all part of the fun of this. You have no idea where it starts, where it might end, and you're not going to read 25. This is it.
No, I didn't. But I will read 23 and 25 after this, because I think it was actually a 3-part series, or a 3-part story. To give you a little background on Checkmate, I feel like we're going back in time here. Do you guys remember Checkmate when it was coming out?
Mm-hmm. I remember it like sort of as like a cousin I haven't seen in 10 years. I don't really know what it's up to, but I remember its face.
It's the cousin that went off to the military and came back, and now you know that cousin has probably killed people. Got
a 1,000-yard stare and kind of twitchy.
I've seen some shit.
Like, dude, you've seen things now. Yeah. Checkmate was an Checkmate goes back, and Tom can probably fill us in a little bit more on like DC history, but Checkmate goes back.
I mean, that book came out like a decade ago, so no, I probably can't tell you any specifics.
Yeah, well, this one came out. This one came out in the last decade, but I think Checkmate as a
organization. I mean, there's been like 100 different.
It's kind of like Suicide Squad. It goes way back, but this was kind of tailor made for Greg Rucka to reboot. Checkmate is basically a super power involved espionage organization that is an arm of the UN. So it's basically like the UN's super powered Black Ops division is probably not the best way to describe it, but accurate enough. But what was interesting about this was Rucka co-wrote this with his good friend Eric Troutman, who is always a good follow on Twitter and whatever social media. Eric was he was owner or part owner of Olympia Comics up in the Northwest Portland-ish area. Good guy, smart guy. And so Greg teamed up with him to write this, and it's in Greg's wheelhouse of the capes and cowls, but espionage. The thing about Checkmate is that it's like a checkboard. It's a lot of chess metaphors in this. You have the white side and the black side, and there's the white king, black king, and it's not by race. It's just a designation. Mr. Terrific is the white king.
Sure he is.
Sure. It's like it's designations and divisions of power. So it's basically there's what's the word? Plausible deniability in operations, because there's separations. And I don't know if this was a hard and fast rule or not, but there are as many non-powered, you don't want to call them royals, but the important chess pieces. So you've got the king, queen, rooks, knights, bishops. The bishops are the advisors to the kings. Each the king and the queen have a
You
knight.
learned all this from this one issue. This was all in this one issue.
Yes, because it spells it's one of these where it does the whole spelling out of stuff.
Jesus.
So I just wanted I wanted to give a little background on Checkmate. So anyway, what has happened in this particular issue is that they have recruited the help of Superman, which helps the ops teams in their planning, because that's kind of a pretty good backup to have, or the tip of the spear in this case. They are trying to hunt down a group of Cobra zealots, and this is where Superman figures out that no matter how strong or tough or fast or great he is, he can't fight radical terrorism, because he can't. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about radicalism. So they bust this big Cobra base, and then they're trying to figure out where like the control center is for this new offshoot of Cobra, and so they send in a Wetworks team, and unfortunately, they infiltrate a much larger base than expected and get wiped out.
Who's on the Wetworks team?
Those are the pawns.
So they're not like superheroes. They're just
no. These are just
murderers. They're just hired murderers.
They're mercs, basically. They've been recruited, and so they go in and they get wiped out. And so at the end of the story, there is a big decision that has to be made with the upper crust of Checkmate on whether they should activate the rooks. And on the last page, the rooks are active, and so the rooks are like a last line of defense.
Murder bots.
Yeah, murder bots, basically. Which I don't know. We'll find out next issue.
Well, we won't. We won't.
I will, because I'll read this. So yeah, little Checkmate, little espionage in the DC universe around 2010ish or so. That's I remember I enjoyed the series.
Yeah, remember it being enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. You guys see Mr. Terrific as a espionage guy? Yeah.
Did it feel dated at all, or was it pretty? I mean, it's not that old, so
it felt like a mid 2000s comic.
Not a whole lot of.
What would I imagine this book being published now? No, probably not like this. So I guess it's of an era, but I mean, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, the thing about books like that, which will date them, is that, I think it would be written with a slightly different perspective now, because the world has gone way crazier than it was in 2010. Well, that's
radical terrorism. That's like, stock and trade of the United States now.
Yeah. That's kindergarten stuff. Yeah. So in that, it probably felt a little dated. So
the world was more sane back then.
The world was more sane back then.
Remember when it would be like only in comic books would you see like radical terrorists in Michigan trying to
kidnap governors and shit. Yeah.
That would never really happen. That's just fiction.
Yeah. And where are they going to take her? Wisconsin. Which we always used to joke with Tom. I mean, Wisconsin is like international waters.
Especially now.
It's a little wild. It's Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting crazy.
All right, that's me.
Well, I did not have as pleasant of an experience.
Oh, no.
Yours was very dated, wasn't it?
When you reach into the box.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get. I mean, life is like a box of comics.
Alas, earwax.
I got Mage, the Hero Discovered, issue number 7 by Matt Wagner. This is a Kamiko book. It was published.
The first series, yeah?
Yes, this was published in May of 1985.
Ooh.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, by Matt Wagner with inks by Sam Keith.
Oh, nice.
Which I guess I never really realized at the time, but I think he inked probably this whole first series.
I will tell you.
It did have a recap, but like you said, it's a little weird. Like I'm jumping into this story and I don't remember it well enough to know what the hell is going on at all. One of the things I thought was funny initially, there's a foreword in the book by Matt Wagner, and the whole foreword is him apologizing because in the last issue of Grendel that came out, they didn't name the inker. He forgot to put the name of the inker in the book, and so he spent an entire column of forward of this book apologizing and saying who it was.
Good for him.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I remember liking Mage a lot when I was a kid. I remember, in 1985 when I was 14 years old and reading this, and it was in the sort of heart of independent comics. Really that time frame of sort of the indie comic was really coming to a head. And this was, one of those books that I really loved, and reading it now is a little tougher. And I'm like, wow, reading it, I was sort of like, man, there's a lot of dialogue in this book. There's a lot of people standing around talking about what they're going to do. And that was really common in indie books. But the other thing I thought of when I was reading this was like, this is very much like this is how Bendis writes. This is what people complain about Bendis, and it's because he, that's where he got his, cut his teeth, was all in the, in the indie books. But I think that was a very indie thing, is like, not to shit on indie comic book makers at all, but I think one of the differences between like a place like Kamiko and Matt Wagner sort of probably having
editor, an editor,
not having an editor. Yes. Not having an editor. And you can kind of see it in like these pages of sort of not useless scenes, but really scenes that don't accomplish much in a storytelling sense. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, they're just not really efficient. And it's just like, I kept reading a scene, like going, okay, what was the point of that scene? Like, what was he trying to accomplish? Because I kind of read books and comics in that way to some degree, of like, what is this scene trying to accomplish, and what am I picking up from it? What am I, what am I getting out of this?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of scenes in here just sort of like, them talking about stuff that they're going to do or that happened to them already. And it's like, yeah, I already read that. I don't know. Like, well,
or
in this case I didn't, but
yeah. I think 80s indie comic books, that was a perfect example of, if someone was a pretty good artist and had an original interesting idea, they could make a series out of that. They didn't necessarily have to be a good scripter, but a good idea, and if it looked pretty. And Mage ticked both of those boxes in 1985.
It absolutely did. I mean, it's a fun comic. The idea is kind of cool, but the weird thing about it now is like sort of sitting there. I didn't know who Matt, I didn't know Matt Wagner at all. I never saw Matt Wagner in the 80s. I didn't even know what he looked like. I didn't know that he was basically drawing a comic about himself. Like he
Kevin
was
Matchstick.
Kevin Matchstick. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't realize that this was sort of a fantasy biography, not biography, but like he is Kevin Matchstick, and it's like, oh. And then like after meeting Matt Wagner and getting to know him a little bit, it's like, okay, that makes sense. That makes complete sense that he would write
that personality.
Yeah, a little bit. So I would say the shine of Mage is, a little tarnished for me at this point in my life. I don't know that I would ever go back and read this again, but I really did enjoy it as a kid. And it is an interesting book in the sense of like, there's a lot of ideas going on in here. Like he has a lot of things in this one issue of like, there's they just met the character Sean, and they inform him that he's a ghost and he's having a hard time sort of dealing with that, which would be something that I think you don't see that enough in books. Like when something weird happens to people, they tend to accept it pretty quickly. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you get superpowers and it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go be a superhero. Oh yeah. All right. No big deal. It reminded me of, do you remember in the 80s, the Starman relaunch, not the Robinson Starman, but before that, when DC did the Starman, the guy, I can't think of the,
he was like the alien.
Yeah. That was like a young guy who got those powers, and like I remember really enjoying the first few issues of that because it was a lot of him like dealing with it, like going, what is going on? Like how, I don't know how to control it. This is really weird. And I kind of like that. So there is that in here where like even Kevin Matchstick at this point, this is only 7 issues into this sort of epic tale that he's telling, and Kevin Matchstick has sort of a hard time even still believing what's going on, that he's sort of the Pendragon and he's, a hero, he's sort of, he doesn't really believe it yet. And so there's some really interesting ideas from that perspective, but it's just so like overwritten, I think.
So 1980s.
Yeah, it's just very 1980s. Yeah. And I have a really hard time at this point, like enjoying.
It's like trying to go back and read the 2080 stuff.
Yeah, I just have a tough time with it, man. I can't do it, but it was fun to kind of go through it again. I will say one thing, like the coloring, it really holds up, even though it's sort of 80s, almost airbrushed to some degree. It really is pretty. Like it's a very kind of pretty colored book.
It's probably right before digital coloring kind of started to creep its way in.
Probably. I mean, it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't look digital. It looks painted. Honestly.
Yeah, it probably was.
But yeah, so I don't know. Interesting to go back and read it, but I don't think I'm gonna go back. It was funny. I remember when like he did the second, the Hero Defined or whatever, and I read that, and then he did the third one recently, and I started reading it. I'm like, yeah, no, this isn't. This I just can't. I can't really get into it anymore.
Ain't for me anymore.
Yeah,
Grendel, outside of the character design, never held any attention for me. And I know that there are huge Grendel fans out there. David Price was a big
David Price, fan. Yeah, he's a huge Matt Wagner fan. Grendel and Mage for sure. But
I mean,
yeah, I just
great character design. I never got into it beyond that.
Yeah, it was an interesting half hour of my life. I'll just say that. Tom, are you frozen? Do you keep freezing up, or are we losing Tom?
He's just really
concentrating on my. I think we lost Tom. I think he froze.
We'll let him. All right, we'll let him ride for a second. Do you have any comics you want to talk about from the last week or so?
I do actually. I have. Okay. Well, there he is. He's back.
Is he back?
He's back.
There he is.
Right.
You froze on us, Tom.
Yeah, I fixed it.
All right. Been looking forward to this.
So, Tom, you had Shazam number 6. This is the DC run, right?
Yeah. This is the 1973 relaunch once Fawcett licensed the character to DC.
I would like to say, first of all, that this is not fair because you did about, 3-4 years of practice of doing individual Silver Age recaps. So I feel very outgunned here.
Tom versus.
Oh, yeah.
Silver.
I mean, I won't bring that level of detail to this. But yeah, I mean, it's okay. This isn't my favorite one.
It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, if I'm being like, it's got 3 stories in it, so it's got like 2 new ones. You know, one by Denny O'Neil with is the writer, and C.C. Beck, who is one of the original artists. You know, worked on like the first 10 issues of the DC relaunch, and I love C.C. Beck's art because it's kind of like harkens back to like a simpler and in some ways like more fun version of comic booking, right? Where it's like it's very playful, there's like lots of space, right? And like it's not jammed up with 1,000 words actually, like
kind of Saturday morning cartoonish.
Yeah, very much so, right? As opposed to like there's a Golden Age reprint, right? And like look at how many fucking words are on this page, man. And then you go to the 70s one, it's like, hey, let's get rid of some of these words, right? And like just like simplify it. And I mean, and they're just really simple Captain Marvel stories, right? And I think they've probably aged well. I mean, I'm trying to think of like what people probably thought of this in 1973, right? Because it's not quite ironic at that point. It's probably a lot of people read it and were like, what the fuck is this? Like,
yeah, it would be odd.
Good...
You got to think you have all the Marvel stuff that had been coming out for
it's
years.
Not. Yeah.
DC.
It's like comics are serious. Yeah, it's like
right?
kind of like
we're starting to get into the Bronze Age.
Yeah, where it's like, let's make our heroes more, not grittier, but like Batman is a detective, and like.
I wonder what the thinking was at DC of like, I mean, obviously that they wanted that licensing, but why? Like, why would like at that point?
I don't know.
Even bring Shazam back?
I mean, I think they probably saw potential with the whole family of characters. I mean, eventually by the 90s, they straight up just owned all of the Fawcett stuff. Or at this point, they were, there's
wanted to really piss off Marvel.
There was the famous lawsuit, where DC sued Fawcett saying that Captain Marvel was a ripoff of Superman, essentially kind of just like ended, Captain Marvel in the 50s. So this is like the relaunch of that.
Which he was,
yeah. Yes. As on some level, most, anybody who can fly and is invulnerable is probably on some level a ripoff of Superman. But he was very popular is why they sued.
More popular than Superman at one point, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I was just kind of thinking about like, man, 1973. I don't know if a kid picked this up, like what they thought of this, because it definitely doesn't fit what else is happening. Like it's definitely like a
Vietnam
little bit of
War.
Yeah, or just like in comics. It's like definitely got a wink to it. Like it's a little ironic. Like you can tell Denny O'Neil, and the second story is by Elliot Megan. Sure. Like they get what
Denny O'Neil wrote that.
Yeah, he wrote one of the stories in here.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. So it's like there's obviously a wink to the fact that, in a sense, Shazam, Captain Marvel, his world is so totally different from like the DC superhero world, right? Like everyone knows Billy Batson is Captain Marvel. Like Dr. Savannah knows Billy Batson is Captain Marvel, right? Like there's no secret identity. He gives him a watch to trick him into like the watch has suspendium so that when he says Shazam, there's 2 minutes between the first syllable and the second syllable. So he says Sha, and he freezes for 2 minutes, and then Dr. Savannah can do all kinds of evil stuff in those 2 minutes before he finishes and says Shazam, right? So it's like playful sort of approaches to that. Suspendium, yeah. And it's all very like his second story is his friend Dexter Knox, the boy genius, accidentally like irradiates his grandmother full of electricity, and all her like stuff in her house starts going crazy when she touches it. So Captain Marvel has to help. I mean, like very low stakes, like Captain Marvel stuff. But there's definitely a playfulness to it. And then the third story is like a Golden Age reprint with like the whole Marvel family, which is interesting, to read. But yeah, I mean, there are better issues of this, like it gets a little funnier actually, and I think they get a little bit more into like, the idea of the multiverse, works really well with Shazam, because the world Shazam lives in is very weird and different, and like does not fit like
Earth,
the world, Earth, like whatever. Which I've always felt like, even Shazam being in the DC universe, it's always been a struggle to figure out what the fuck he is exactly, because
he just doesn't fit.
The true heart of it is like he's not a secret identity,
Right.
Like he's just a kid reporter. Yeah, like this kid's got a job reporting for like the local TV station, which seems insane that he's like trusted to like cover all the major news like in the town and be Captain Marvel.
Well,
and
like that idea just like is so, sort of an era. It's like so much of when Shazam first came around, and you can think of it like, I mean, you think of like the radio serials that were happening at the time, is like it fit into that kind of thing, and then to kind of try and put that into another era, in the 70s, it's just so hard. I was reading, it was actually Carmine Infantino that brought Shazam to DC.
Yeah,
really? But there's a quote here I just saw by Beck, and he's like, what did he say? As an illustrator, I could in the old days make a good story better by bringing it to life with drawings, but I couldn't bring the new Captain Marvel stories to life no matter how hard I tried. He just, I don't know. I think it was just such a weird, like, and still is. And I love, like, Captain Marvel has always been one of my favorite characters. And I love all the weirdness and silliness of the Marvel family and all that, but he just doesn't fit. Like, even, I liked the movie that they did, and I thought they did a pretty decent job with it, but it is just
its own thing. It's like whenever they put him in like JSA, it's like, okay, well, the JSA has a Superman now.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just something so strange about him, and nobody's quite been able to.
That's why I liked in Multiversity when Morrison did the Thunderworlds.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which was cool because it essentially was like, Captain Marvel lives in a totally different world. Like, there's talking tigers that he's friends with, and one of his enemies is a worm. And it's just like, that's just how it is here, and I haven't read that Multiversity issue in a while, but I remember, like how that issue embraces that of like, this world's just weird. Like, just like crazy stuff happens, and that's just how it is, I
always felt that like Mary Marvel that Mary Marvel fit the DCU better than Captain Marvel. I for whatever reason, I seem to enjoy stories.
I could see that. Yeah, I could see that. She always was like, I don't know. I mean, a little more the voice of reason in some ways,
kind
so
of the
maybe
big sister.
Yeah, she was the big sister, so that kind of fit more. Yeah, I don't know. It is a weird thing. I like Shazam, but it's such a hard. Like, I don't think anyone has quite figured out how to reinvent him to fit in a modern comic or movie or TV. You know what I mean? Like, they keep trying, and people have done some interesting takes on it, but it's like to fit him in the same universe as Superman and Batman. Is just seems like nobody's quite figured out how to do that right. Where I think like he could be a really popular character, but then it's like out of that universe, the most popular character became Black Adam, because he fits into the sort of dark superhero world so much better than Shazam knows, because Shazam is just at his heart, he's a kid. He's the, you know, it's like they almost need to sort of, you know, like what Marvel did with Spider-Man in the Avenger movies, where he's like the rookie kid, bright-eyed and sort of, hey there, Iron Man, you know, like kind of. But I think because he's so powerful, it's almost hard to do that even with him, where it's like, you know, he's.
I thought the movie kind of nailed that.
I thought they did a really good job with it. I mean, I did like the movie, but you know, I just happened to watch it again. Actually, it was on HBO or something, and we were watching it, and the end scene comes up with Mr. Mind, and I'm like smiling. You're seeing Mr. Mind.
Yeah.
But my kids are like trying to explain that
Mr. One of his bad guys is a worm from Venus.
Yeah.
Who wants to conquer the world.
Yeah. I remember. Do you remember when in 52 when Mr. Mind kind of ended up being the big bad?
Yeah, it's great use of Mr. Mind.
Yeah,
it's got whose boosters robot
Skeets.
It's Mr. Mind had gotten inside of Skeet.
Gotten inside of him.
But you know, it's you know, Shazam always made more sense in a multiverse where you show up and Superman visits, you know, Earth 5. And it's like, oh, yep, this is a weird place. Or like Mr. Mind sneaks over to Earth 2 to like put together the, you know, like the League of Monsters or whatever. You know, like their logic kind of like sneaks over and they like, oh, that's cool. And then they kind of go back to their place.
Who was Earth B named after?
Bob Haney, because he couldn't fucking keep track of where people were.
Yeah, because Haney just kind of did whatever the hell he wanted.
He put like Wildcat in a story with Batman, and it was like, but they're on. This is not Earth 2 Batman. You're in the wrong Earth, and so they had to make a designation for those stories. Like when you go through like the absolute Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they have like which I got around here somewhere. They have these. Like the compendium that comes with it that like breaks down all the different Earths, and like someone's listed out like Earth 487 is the one that you saw in this alternate universe. Earth B is the one where Wildcat and Batman hang out.
You gotta. Well, where is DC at now with?
How many universes?
Yeah, I don't even know now.
52, I guess.
There's a dark universe, right? That's all the rage now. The dark.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Okay, tell that story.
You know, like
I was always disappointed that Multiversity didn't lead to like some of the more interesting, like that the story about Thunderworld didn't lead to more Thunderworld stories.
Well, that's what I really thought. Like when they announced that initially, and the whole concept behind it, I thought it was going to be like, okay, now we can, you know. And I think I remember like reading a thing with Morrison talking about it. It's like, well, at the end of it, you're going to have all these worlds to sort of play with again.
Mm-hmm.
But then nobody did. Like,
yeah, it was like in the hardcover edition, they list out what all 52 Earths are.
I remember that.
And they like this is what this Earth is, and this is what this Earth is. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, some of these are pretty interesting jumping off points if you wanted to do a mini series about, you know, this Earth or that Earth. But then never really materialized into like a thing, you know, or like,
yeah, like I said, I mean, Snyder's the only one who's you know, the dark universe, whatever that is.
Did that spin out of that?
I think so, but I don't even know if was that one of the Earths.
I don't think it was. I think that's like
it's its own, like it's taken over everything now. It's like I'm kind of ready for the whole metal. You know, it's like, okay, we get it. You're a nerd who likes metal, and everything's metal.
So metal, man.
So metal. Metal.
So, so was this a moderate success? We should, you know, let listeners speak. But are you guys ready to go back to the boxes?
I don't know. Do we want to do it every week or just like every once in a while?
Let's do it once a month.
Once a month. Okay. All right. So next week, the first trade of Transmet's not that big. Are we going to be ready to talk about Transmet next week?
Yeah,
I can read it by then.
Okay.
I haven't started, but I can.
I think the first trade's only like 4 issues or something. It's not a big trade.
Cool.
I have to read all of them though.
The entire series, you have to read. You know
before
what?
You're ready to.
Here's the comic book confession. Never finished Transmet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, never. I got about halfway through twice.
I can't remember if I did or not.
Yeah. And I like it. It's just one that I just never. I think I stopped buying it. It's like the trades went out of print or something, and I didn't have the go get it.
I don't even know if I did either. Who knows? I may not have.
Yeah. We'll get into this when we talk about it, but I always liked the idea of it more, I think, than I liked
the execution.
The execution or like the stories.
Right.
Like I always liked like the idea of it, and there's like moments that I like in it. But it's like I can't say that that I could talk about any story that actually happens or any of those like stuck with me beyond like I could explain like the concept of the series and like things I remember about it, but like I don't remember ever being like, oh, that was a great story. Maybe I'm just old and
no, I don't think. I mean, I think he wrote it in a way where it was, it was that sort of gonzo ideal that he was searching for, I think, and it was just it was a lot of craziness sort of packed into it, but not necessarily a clear narrative, through it. It was just like it would jump all over the place. But
we'll talk about it next week.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing how that holds up because things are definitely weirder now than they were in 2000. So,
well, I did read a fun comic this week.
Yay!
That came out. If we want, M.O.D.O.K. Head Games #1. This is a M.O.D.O.K. miniseries. It's written by Jordan Blum and Patton Oswalt. I don't know who Jordan Blum is, but Patton Oswalt, the comedian and big comic book fan, with art by Scott Hepburn. It was really fun. Like basically, the idea is M.O.D.O.K. We know who M.O.D.O.K. is. This, and he's in charge of AIM, but he's sort of going through this kind of crisis at the moment where he's being very distracted by memories of a life that he didn't have or doesn't think he had, where like he had a M.O.D.O.K. family and like a M.O.D.O.K. wife and like kids and stuff. So he's being but
were they all like M.O.D.O.Ks?
No, just the wife was, and then the kids were like normal. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But it was just like flashes. But so he's sort of being challenged as the leader of AIM by a woman. I don't know who she is. I don't know who her name's Monica Rappaccini. I don't know. She's just an AIM, mad scientist or whatever. But the thing I really enjoyed about this was the way that they portrayed M.O.D.O.K. I thought was perfect because, he's brilliant. He has this amazing like computer mind that can make, enormous amounts of calculations very quickly and easily. He's extremely powerful and deadly. He has psionic powers and all this stuff. And you would think that would make him a really effective villain, but I don't know that M.O.D.O.K. ever has been, right? Like he's always sort of been not a joke, but he's never necessarily been like a top tier villain, I don't think, in Marvel. And they kind of explain it in a way by you in this, you're gonna get to see his thoughts and his, what's going on in his head. And the way they did it, he's so sort of constantly annoyed by the idiots around him and by all the like common stupidity in the world that it distracts him from being like a really effective supervillain. And it's really funny. Yeah, it's really good. Like they really nailed him. He is sort of like, and it works because Patton Oswalt, his comedy is sort of like that. I mean, I'm sure he's like that to some degree as a person, but I think, the character he plays on stage is sort of like that very millennial or not millennial, but very like, pissed off at the world, like, agitated by everything in the world because everything is stupid. I mean, that's just sort of a comedian. Like, that's what comedians are kind of like. That's why they're comedians, because everything and that's sort of MODOK. He's just the morons around him in AIM, just the way the world works in a stupid ways. And it makes him a little, but it was really funny. So he's basically this issue is basically him being challenged by this Monica agent in AIM for sort of leadership. And at the same time, he's having these like flashbacks to this family that he doesn't know, what it is. He doesn't understand it. And at the end, I don't want to spoil it for anyone or anything, but at the end, it leads to him looking for help, and sort of, being pushed out of AIM and then looking for help. But, I just thought it was really funny, and I'm like, man, in reading it, the art was really great. It reminded me a little bit of Chris. Who's the artist who did the Wonder Woman series, the Dead Earth? I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Daniel Warren Johnson.
A little bit like that, very kinetic, a lot of energy. A little, kind of gross when he draws certain things, but very fun. This was a really, really, really fun comic book. And when I got done reading, I'm like, man, I would love to see this could be a cartoon. Like, this MODOK could absolutely be a cartoon, in sort of the vein of like Pinky and the Brain, where it's like you have this genius who wants to take over the world, but he's constantly distracted by idiocy. And I'm like, I could see that every week, like him just having some plan to take over the world, and because of his own, sort of arrogance, and also, the people around him sort of not living up to his standards, his impossible standards, hilarity ensues. But really fun issue, really, really, really like a fun comic book all around. Cool. Great art, great writing. It was really good.
I'm gonna have to check it out. Sounds
good. I was surprised.
Nice. So I think I talked about the first issue of Cable by Jerry Duggan and Phil Noto, which they did. Was it called? No, it wasn't Event Horizon. What was they did the crap? What was the name of that series that they did that I really enjoyed? It was kind of a retelling of the Odyssey. Anyway, it's that team. It's that team.
They've done a bunch of stuff together now, right?
The what?
They've done a bunch of stuff together now. Haven't
they?
I
think they're kind of a definitely a go-to team. Tom, I think you would love this comic.
All right.
It is more so than, and I think Sal would enjoy it.
I did start reading it. I read the first issue. I haven't read more, but I did like the first issue.
Just the absolute fun. This is like how I imagine a teenager series in the Marvel universe being. It's having ridiculous superpowers. I mean, Cable.
It's perfect for us then. I mean,
oh yeah, exactly. Because we're teenagers at heart. I don't know that I am so far behind on X stuff. I don't know how young Cable came into this world and why it's not old Cable anymore. I don't care. And
he's a time traveler, baby.
Exactly. He's a time traveler. And that's all that matters.
It's comic books.
Is that Cable's kind of like he's kind of like the captain of the football team. He's big man on campus with all of the younger ex-students. He's dating all of the cuckoos, which is hilarious. And Emma Frost is like, do not break my daughter's hearts. Except for Esme, she deserves it.
Are they her daughters?
Huh?
Are they her daughters?
They refer to her as mother. She refers to them as her daughters. I'd have to go back and read the Grant Morrison.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah.
But yeah, there goes
lost Tom again.
But yeah, I mean, it's got Space Knights, so it's like if you're a ROM fan, there's Space Knights in here. If you're a Deadpool fan, it has him going and hooking back up with not, did I say Daredevil? Deadpool. So it's Deadpool interacting
right
with young surly Cable, which leads to all sorts of funny, just saying that he goes and he has to deal with Deadpool, who's apparently a king now somewhere. It's king of something.
Sure.
It's comics, baby.
That's why I think you would love it, Tom. It's just a super fun Cable series, young Cable, and it definitely has that kind of teenage TV show, One Tree Hill kind of thing, going. So yeah, super fun.
The only thing I didn't like was the beginning when he was fighting Wolverine, and I'm just like, all right, why does everybody have to use Wolverine as sort of like the cannon fodder now? Like, whenever it seems like he's the go-to, we're gonna beat up Wolverine to show how badass this character is.
I think that's kind of what it does, is that it shows that Cable's able to hold his own in a fight. So it just kind of sets up his power level, would be my guess. Which they
cheap.
Yeah. Huh?
It's lazy writing.
Well, it's probably yeah, but that's okay. Hey, Wolverine sells comics, baby.
That he does.
Yep.
Always
but
has.
yeah, I now that I had wanted to get the next few issues of it, and then I went to the comic shop, and it's volume 1 is already out, and I think it's only maybe four issues, 4 or 5 issues, so it's a quick read. But I enjoyed it.
Cool.
Did you read anything else this week, Tom?
What was that?
Did you read anything else this week?
Nothing worth talking about.
You're trying to shake off your Dune hangover.
Oh yeah. I stopped reading that. Didn't. I gave it another like 10 pages. I was like, ugh, no.
Great. I downloaded it. I bought it on Kindle. I started reading it, but I have
Hoopla.
like 4. Huh?
It's on Hoopla.
Oh no, not. I'm sorry, not the comic. The
book.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I wanted to say something. I wanted to mention something. Somebody sent me this comic that I don't know. I'm not sure when it was published. I think it was pretty recently. By Dave Sim.
Oh, really?
It's called You Don't Know Jack, Two-Fisted Comic Store Manager. It's extremely weird. It was published.
It's Dave Sim.
Yeah, it was published in 2020, October of 2020 is what it says, but I don't know where this came out. I don't know. It doesn't have a publisher on it. I'm assuming it's self-published. It is one of the most bizarre and beautiful comics that I've ever seen. Like, as far as just straight up black and white artwork, I don't think it's Dave Sim actually doing the art. I'm not sure. It doesn't say.
Okay.
There's like 4 names on the front cover. It's Dave Sim, Carson Grubraw, and Jack Van Dyke. So I'm not sure if this is Dave Sim's art or not. I don't think it is. I think it's the Carson guy, but it is fucking gorgeous. But the stories are so weird and like strangely, like strangely anti-feminist in a, but pretending to be feminist.
I was gonna say, how much misogyny is in this book?
A lot, but like in a weirdly, like almost. I can't. It's so hard to explain. This is one of the weirdest comics I've ever read. One of the things about it is, and he tells you this in the beginning. The character of the book is this woman, named Jack, and she's a comic store manager apparently, and I believe she's a real person that they know, and that they had taken pictures of her for reference material for another comic book that Dave Sim was doing called The Death of Alex Raymond. Alex Raymond, the famous comic book artist who died in a car crash. Evidently, Dave Sim was going to work on, or did work on, a comic book version of that story. And he had taken some photo reference, but it was like 3 pictures of this woman. And it took me a while to realize it because the art is so wonderfully done. But he uses the same image over and over and over again. Every panel of this woman talking is essentially one of 3 panels. But it works so well because he's so, this is the fucking infuriating thing about Dave Sim, is that he is an absolute fucking master of this medium, but also a misogynist, kind of piece of shit.
Yeah.
And it's just like, but I was fascinated by the book. It's so weird. But I'm telling you, it is so beautifully done from a black and white, just like purely use of the medium. It is just like a fucking shame that it's too bizarre, like too bizarrely. I mean, it's. I wouldn't even say it's misogynist in the sense that it's just like poking the bear. It's like intentionally just sort of like, it uses a lot of sort of like trigger warning stuff and
it's like just trolling.
Yeah, it's just trolling, but unbelievably beautiful art. Like that's the fucked up thing about it, is like it's such good comic books and just such a fucking absolute waste of time.
I don't need to dedicate any more time in my life to reading anything that Dave Sim has to.
It is so odd, and like I said, somebody sent it to me, so I'm like, okay, I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
I just had to talk about it because it was just like I'm not.
Yeah, I'm looking at pages of it.
I mean, it's beautiful, right? It's just masterful artwork. And it's a strange, like,
you know what it reminds me of a little bit?
What's that?
It reminds me of we were talking about Rorschach and the fake comic inside it, where it's like, I'm going to explain my agenda.
Right.
And it's like, oh God.
That's what this is kind of. It's very, at the one point he does, it's a bunch of like short stories. It's a bunch of like, some are longer than others, but one is about like how evidently I don't know if he's angry, but he thinks it's funny or kind of stupid that the new Iron Man is a woman. And so he's taken classic covers of Tales of Suspense and redone them with Iron Man, like the old, Mark I armor, but with giant armor tits,
boob plates
on it. And he's done like 4 fucking covers, like, and they're unbelievably well done. And it's just like, can't you find anything else to say? Like, couldn't you, like, it's just
I'm
so
sorry
strange.
Your mother didn't love you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't even know what, like, I know, like, there was some controversy, or there's a lot of, I never read enough of Cerebus to know, like, what the controversy around it was. I don't even know why people were pissed off at Dave Sim. I know that people are pissed off at Dave Sim for things that he said and done. And obviously he's, a trolly douche. I mean, it's very easy to tell from this effort, but it's just like, fuck, man.
You talked about Matt Wagner earlier, and Dave Sim is another, kind of 80s icon of independent comics, and Cerebus, some brilliant stuff. And so when I think of Dave Sim, I just kind of makes me sad because the guy had a pretty amazing comics legacy that for whatever reason, he's just kind of shit all over it in the last decade or so. And it's sad to me because he was kind of like an 80s indie icon. And, it's like, I wish that was the legacy that he left. And, unfortunately he's got to, kind of, shit all over the Sunday, for how
the fucked up thing is like, I don't know who this, and I keep saying Dave Sim, but I don't believe that the artwork in here is by Dave Sim, even though it kind of looks like a Dave Sim comic,
Cerebus-esque.
Yeah, to some degree, but it's absolutely gorgeous. And it's like, well, now you're just taking somebody else down with you. This guy is obviously an incredibly talented artist.
Yeah.
And you're just fucking taking him down you know, this shitty, you know, rabbit hole of
maybe he's an asshole too.
Huh?
Maybe he's an
Well,
asshole.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. You know, I don't know. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just weird. I just had to talk about it a little bit because it's just such a strange.
You know, I've read some Cerebus, and you can definitely see I feel like there's a transition in it where it goes from like it goes into that weird space of that fake comic in the Rorschach where it's like, whoa, what is that? Like now someone's just like talking at me about
like a parody of itself almost.
Yeah, where it's just like, this is my agenda and I'm going to explain it to you. And if you don't like it, I'm just going to keep explaining it. It's like sort of a classic. I feel like, you know, it's like one of those cases where someone explains what they believe and people are like, oh, that's fucked up. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Let me keep explaining.
This is important. This is really important.
Keep explaining it, and people keep going, yeah, I get it.
Like, well, it's, you know, it's kind of like, you know, whenever we talk about Frank Miller,
get what you're saying. It's fucked up.
No, I mean, we've talked about this with Frank Miller that, you know, when he started publishing some of his more off the wall stuff, it's, you go back and you read, you know, DKR and some of his other stuff. It's like that was there. We just didn't realize that he meant it. You know, it came off as satire, and it's like, oh no, he may have like actually been like believing some of those talking heads. You know, it's, you know what I'm talking about.
It's an odd thing. It's you know, I don't know. I think with Frank, you know, I don't know.
Frank's interesting.
We've talked
both very interesting. They're
incredibly talented.
It's hard to say because it's like I don't know them.
Right.
So the things I know are what they say publicly. But the things that they say publicly would lead me to think like, dude, what are you talking about? You know, so it's always like, hey, like this is the stuff you've chose. This is your voice that you've chose to represent yourself with. You know,
well, that's where I'm like this, and it's like, dude, you know, I mean, let me. Here's the opening page is it's a little weird. I don't quite understand it, but it's basically this woman reading some comics, this Jack woman, but then he's explaining to you that every story in here is going to have a like a trigger warning level number, whether it's 9. This is a trigger level 9.8. So he's sort of poking that, you know, bear. But the way he writes this part, it says accompanying that is a number specifying the exact number of pounds per square inch exerted by Aunt Sadie in clutching her pearls when she got to what offended her in the story. And regardless of what he's saying, because obviously what he's saying is just, like you said, trollish, it's like that's a wonderfully written fucking sentence. Like that's the thing that's so fucking maddening. It's like, you're obviously an incredibly bright, intelligent, artistic person. Why is it you're choosing this to be your legacy? Why that? You know what I mean? Like, I would fucking kill to have the talent that Dave Sim has, but he chooses to fucking waste it with this bizarre war against, you know, it's just so odd.
They're sort of screaming. Old man yells at cloud.
Yeah, man.
You know, where it's like, okay, like what are you doing? Like it's you know,
is there anything better you could be, you know, like,
because it's so like, it's so strange because it's like I'm doing this small little thing that most people don't know about, and the people that are funding it, like that's the thing though, it's like an Indiegogo project, right? Like people, you know, you have your audience who, you know, on some level, if they're donating money, are like, I want to see more of what Dave Sim does. so maybe that factors
Right.
into it too, where it's like, well, this is what I do, and like it just seems so strange, like to like have this like trollish rinky dink thing that like is never, by the topic and the way you're trolling people is never going to get in the hands of anybody that you want to have any sort of discourse with, or like if you think what you're saying is important, like you've packaged it in like a weird way that like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, what is this? Like, why?
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. It's like, it's so bizarre. It's like, is it a big, is it just a big joke? Are you trying to convince people of something? Are you trying to change people's minds? It's just so odd.
Yeah,
it's
because
intriguing,
because he always has an air of seriousness to what he does, right? So it's like hard to take it as a joke because he always has this thread, even in Cerebus, of like, this is serious thought about something, right? Like, so it's hard to say that anything's like a tossed off joke, even when he's making it a tossed off joke, because everything
even in this, it starts off very jokey. Like there's even a part like in the beginning where he's sort of explaining everything, and he's sort of like self-deprecating. The main character is sort of making fun of Dave Sim, and he's sort of making fun of himself. But as it goes on, there's less and less of that, and more, just sort of this weird, bashing of women, and yeah, it's just so odd. It's just so fucking odd.
Right? It's hard to like. I mean, and maybe the theme of today is weird 80s independent comic creators just doing their thing. And it's like,
well, then there's one story in it that is titled Fanboy Id Julie Bell, and then parentheses is by far the better painter. And it's a one-page story about a guy in a comic book store, it looks like, talking about how Boris Vallejo's art gets him excited. And then the joke is, this guy is going to buy this art book of Boris Vallejo's and go home and masturbate to it. And Julie Bell's book heaves a sigh of relief. And so it's such an odd thing, because if you don't know who those people are, like most people know who Boris Vallejo might be, he's a very famous painter, but like Julie Bell is his second wife, and she's a painter as well, and she's a terrific fantasy painter as well. But like, it's such a bizarre, like, it's a weirdly defensive thing of Julie Bell's art, but it's like just so odd. In 2020, like, when was the last time anybody thought of fucking Boris Vallejo or Julie Bell? Like, when was that relevant? Like, it's just such an odd thing in 2020 to have this one-page story. I can't even, like, it's so weird. It's just such a weird thing for me, like, to sit here and try and go, well, what is this? Why is this in here? Is this just a random fucking thought, that he decides to illustrate? And I don't know. It's just shit like that. It's a fascinating book. It really is. Because
what's the name of it again?
It's called You Don't Know Jack, comic store. Let me go back to the beginning. You Don't Know Jack, Two-Fisted Comic Store Manager. And I don't, it's, and then he has these other ones where it's like very, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee 90s. There's this 90s female character called Avenjacques, 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 ES, and there's like 2 or 3 of those stories in here that are very weird and completely out of place, seemingly, and they're in a very 90s Image comic style. There's so much bizarre shit in this one issue. It's worth taking a look at just because of the dichotomy of it. It's just it's you do not see stuff like this published much anymore in comics. You know what I mean?
And that's something about Dave Sim I didn't know, which explains a lot.
What's
Canadian.
Come on now. We're huge in Canada, man. Don't upset our Canadian.
Yeah, I'm the only curler of the 3 of us, so.
That's for sure. That is for sure. But anyway, I just wanted to bring it up because it's.
Tom's got that. I've got to get up at 4 a.m. look.
Yeah, we gotta wrap this up.
All right, bud. Hey, I tell you, let's do something new. Let's actually do the outro with Tom here.
Yeah, usually
with Tom here. We can do that.
All right. So Transmet next week. I'm
gonna read that Dave Sim comic. Find some way to read that Dave Sim comic so I can
there you go.
Talk to you about how weird it is.
Remember, you can contact the show by emailing us at info@aroundcomics.com. You can hit us up on all the social media outlets out there, except for TikTok. We're waiting for Tom to start the TikTok channel.
He is the youngest of us. That would only make sense.
You're get out there and do a dance. Do one of them TikTok dances.
You know what all the kids are doing these days.
All the young people.
All right, so
that's my son.
Trade talks and catch up on some other comics and maybe talk a little Mandalorian. I want to talk about the FET. You guys excited about the FET?
Honestly, I'm more excited that Bill Burr's returning.
Yes.
I mean, it was cool. The Boba Fett thing was cool. It's like, okay, that's neat. It was a cool scene.
And you're like, oh, Bill Burr, way excited.
But then I was like, whoa, Bill Burr's coming back. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Yep. So looking forward to that. So we'll talk about all of that and a bunch of other stuff. In the meantime,
in between time,
we'll be everywhere in
and around comics.